These two rolling targets, these are the level 3 problems on your test, so the meeting standard problems. You actually don't just say positive slope because the line rises, negative slope because the line falls. You have to actually give the numbers. Please, 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 I am begging you, pay attention to the scales. If you do not, you will have incorrect answers on some of your problems. And I'll explain what that means in just a minute, but write that on your notes. Pay attention to the scales. If slope is rise over run, and I think of starting from one of these points, rise goes up and down. So if I'm going to the other point, I rise 1 square, and then I run across 2 squares. The first thing I think of before I do anything else is, since this line rises from left to right, my slope is going to be positive. Remember, rise over run. So the first thing I'm going to do is it positive or negative? Then I'm going to start this fraction bar so I can do my rise over my run. Since y is the vertical change, I'm moving 1 square, and if I pay attention to the scale on the y-axis, if this is 0 and this is -1, my scale's going by 1s. So my rise really is 1. The scale on my x-axis is also going by 1s. So when I move 2 squares over, I'm really just moving 2. I cannot reduce 1/2, so m equals 1/2. When I look at the second graph, the first thing I notice is that this line falls as it moves from left to right across the graph. So the slope is negative. Again, start my fraction bar. From this point to this point, rise, the vertical part I do first. I'm moving down 3, 4, 5 boxes, but notice that the scale on the y-axis is going by 4s. It's not going by 1s. So every time I move down 1 square, I've really moved down a value of 4 instead of just moving down 1. So I'm going to take 4 times that 5 and say I really moved a distance of 20. And then I move 1, 2, 3, 4 boxes over for my run. But again, notice that this scale on the x-axis, oops, meant to change the color and didn't do it. On the x-axis, my scale is going by 2s. So I need to multiply that 4 by 2 and say, if I'm with 4 boxes, I really moved a distance of 8. Now the expectation on these problems is, if you can give your answer as an integer, so if your slope is 6 over 3, write it as 2. 2 is an integer. If it's -18 over 6, write it as -3 because that's an integer, and 6 goes into 18 evenly. If you cannot give your answer as an integer, or in a case where you have an answer that's undefined, give it as undefined. If you cannot give it as an integer, just reduce the fraction but leave it as a fraction. So when I go back to the -20 over 8, I know my answer is negative, and again I took care of the sign first. And then 20 over 8, 4 goes into 25 times, 4 goes into 8 2 times, and I can't reduce that anymore. So my final slope is just a reduced fraction, not mixed number, of m equals -5/2. Again, if I could give it as an integer, don't write 2 over 1 as a final answer. It can just be 2. In a table, and these aren't in a table yet, but I would probably put them in a table. X as an ordered pair goes first, so x before y in an ordered pair, x before y in this ordered pair. When x is 1, y is 5. Put these in the right place. When x is 3, y is 10. When I go from 1 to 3, I'm moving up 2. When I go from 5 to 10, I'm moving up 5. Now I could get these numbers by taking 3 minus 1 to get the 2, 10 minus 5 to get the 5. So if I can't just see that, I can calculate it. If I remember that slope is rise over run, y's rise, x's run across. It's the change in y, the 5, that goes in the numerator. The change in x, the 2, goes in the denominator. I can't simplify 5 over 2, so that's my slope. Sometimes you will see horizontal xy tables. When x is 5, y is negative 8. When x is 5 and this point, y is 6. My x from 5 to 5, there's no change. My y from negative 8 to positive 6, there's a change of positive 14. Again, as a reminder, I could have gotten that by 6 minus my negative 8 would give me positive 14. Here, the challenge is I see the 0 on top of the 14. But if I remember rise over run and y's rise, the change in y, the 14 goes in the numerator, the change in x, the 0 goes in the denominator. If you punch this in your calculator, you get an error, so this slope is undefined. The line is not undefined, but the slope is undefined. I'm going to go back to the vertical table because I prefer it. So when x is negative 2, y is 10. When x is 6, y is 10. From negative 2 to positive 6, I'm increasing by 8. And from 10 to 10, I have no change. Slope is rise over run. Y's rise, so the change in y, the 0, goes on top. The change in x, the 8, goes in the denominator. And if I punch 0 divided by 8 into my calculator, I get an answer of 0. So again, m is my variable. M is for mountains, and mountains have slopes. M equals 0.